Hi and welcome to this video on memos. In offices today, the corporate culture is such that we have to have meetings almost on a constant basis. Now, these meetings may not be attended to by everyone, but people in the office have to be informed about what happens. Now, how do these people get the information? Either they get it through memos, circulars, or notices. In this video, we will discuss on how the memo is written. At the end of this video, you will be able to explain the structure of a memo. So let's take a look at the definition of a memo. While memo is a short form for memorandum, we have to understand it is derived from a Latin word memorandus, which actually means a thing which must be remembered. Like I mentioned before, meetings are a very important part of our corporate culture. Now, there are things in the meeting that have to be recorded, have to be remembered and passed on to employees. Let's take, for example, there has been a meeting with regard to the pest maintenance or pest control in an organization. Now, everybody in the office cannot come for this meeting. It is the facilities or the maintenance team that would meet. But the meeting would come up with some kind of a solution for pest control and steps to be taken. Now, these steps have to be conveyed to the rest of the employees. And how is this done? It is done by using a memo. Now that we've looked at the meaning of a memo, let's take a look at some of the distinctive features of a memo. Memos are also called inter-office memorandums. Now, inter-office because it is circulated within the office or within the organization. It could also be circulated within departments in the same organization. They can be used as formal and informal communication. Now, this depends totally on the purpose of the discussion that has taken place. Informal could be just say on a Friday evening, the office staff decide that we need to have a get-together. So how do you get to inform everybody about it? We just send out an informal memo saying that the entire team is meeting up on Friday evening at 4:30 for tea. Now, memos ideally are one page and in some instances could go up to 2 pages depending on the length of the discussions or the number of points that have been taken up. Anything beyond 2 pages cannot be considered a memo, instead of which you might as well write a report. So we follow something called the principles of précis writing. Writing a memo is just like précis writing. Having said this, now let's take a look at all the 3 principles of précis writing. Principles of précis writing are condensation, comprehension, and coverage. They are commonly known as the 3 C's of précis writing. Now let's take a look at each of these in detail. Condensation. Condensation actually means cutting down or paraphrasing. Now, condensation does not mean chopping off indiscriminately. Now, why do we have to condense? Like I said, a memo is usually 1 page or maximum 2 pages. Now, the idea about a memo is it has to be brief. It is a smaller version of the entire meeting that took place. So, we condense without actually chopping off all the main points. Comprehension. Comprehension means understanding. Now, a memo, though it has been condensed, it has to be able to be understood by the person reading it. Now, comprehension is easy if the person reading it is able to grasp the essence of what has happened. The idea about comprehension is, again, keeping it brief and clear. Now, how do you get them to write a short memo which is comprehensible? Is try and have a face-to-face conversation with the leader. This is, I'm saying visually, not actually having the face-to-face. Now, this would help you condense and comprehend the message and make it reader-friendly. The third point that we look at is coverage. Coverage deals with covering all the main points. Normally, what happens is when we try to condense, we end up missing out some of the major points. Now, this would defeat the purpose of sending out the memo. So, what do? We have to cover, we have to condense, we have to ensure that the person can understand it. So, the principles of précis writing will actually guide you through writing this crisp memo so that the people who the information has to be shared with understand everything. Let's take a look at the format of a memo. While companies differ or customize the formats of their memo, we will look at a format for our learning purposes, but always remember that a memo will have three parts, which will be the heading, the body, and the signature part. So let's start with the heading. The particulars of the heading actually serve as a reference point for future communication. Very important in terms of date, that is the date not of when the meeting was held, but on the date of sending the memo. Usually memos are sent within 24 hours of an event being held or a discussion being held. Reference helps us to dig out from the past if we need to refer to a particular memo. Reference numbers are very, very important. Especially in today's email era, we keep sending out so much email. So a reference would help us actually dig out from a lot of other mails, a memo that we want to look at. Now the two is addressed to the person to whom we actually want to send it to, so that we know who is responsible or accountable for having received it. And from is the person sending the memo. Now subject line is also important. It has to be crisp. For example, going back to the example that I gave with regard to the pest menace, you could put in your subject line, meeting regarding pest control. This will help us identify at the beginning itself what the memo is all about. Now let's move into the body. Now the body of the memo is where you actually start to practice the 3 C's of Prezi writing. The body has to be crisp, it has to cover all the main points, and it has to sound very professional. Now it is not mandatory to start the memo with dear and respected, but we usually advise you to do it so that it gives a personal touch to the person who is reading the memo. And you could also use pronouns like I and you. For example, you could say, I would like to discuss the report with you on maybe Wednesday morning 10 a.m. Now this again would give you that rapport with the person who is actually reading the memo. Now let's look at the next block, which is the name and the signature. The name is usually written in capital letters, and the signature is your personal signature or an e-signature, considering the era of electronic mail. There is also a close action here that we have, though not mandatory. Again, I would advise you to use things like sincerely at the end of the memo. This gives a good close to the memo. Again, it helps in building rapport with the person who is reading this memo. Coming to the next, which is the CC component. CC is actually a carbon copy, or what we call today as courtesy copy. CC is usually addressed to the people who are also involved in getting the information. Now let's take, for example, the marketing manager sends out a memo to his immediate subordinate, who could be the senior manager, let's say. Now, though the senior manager is actually directly responsible for whatever is said in the memo, it may contain information that the entire marketing team needs to know, in which case the CC would be marked to the marketing team. The key points discussed in this video are: the word memo is a short form for memorandum. It means a thing which must be remembered. The principles of Prezi writing. They are condensation, comprehension, and coverage. Components and format of a memo. The header, the body, close action, and courtesy copy. Now, how can you use this information that we've discussed in this video? Condensing information without losing the essence of the meaning of the message is an art that you are now aware of. You know the 3 C's and you know how well to practice it.